Be honest with me for a second. Are you the workplace safety net? I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? When a deadline starts slipping, who does everyone immediately call? You. When things go sideways and somebody needs to just step up and say, I'll take care of it, it's always you raising your hand. You're the one who remembers all the tiny moving pieces. You're solving complex problems before anyone else on the team even realizes there's an issue. And because you rarely complain, well, everyone just assumes you're doing perfectly fine. But honestly, are you? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack the fascinating psychology behind being the reliable one. Now look, being reliable sounds like this massive superpower, right? And it absolutely is. Organizations desperately need people who actually care, who follow through, and who support their team. But here's the catch. There is a hidden psychological cost. Today, we're exploring exactly what happens when that super valuable trait of dependability slowly morphs into toxic over-responsibility, which ultimately just creates chronic stress and burnout. Let's start with Section 1, the reliable employee, and what happens when reliability actually becomes an identity. The absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is the stark difference between healthy dependability and the trap of making reliability your entire core identity. See, healthy reliability, it's simple, and most importantly, it's sustainable. It means making commitments you can actually keep. You take ownership of your specific role, you communicate clearly, and you help out when you genuinely have the capacity to do so. But then, there's unhealthy reliability. This is where it gets dangerous. You stop just thinking, I'm a reliable person, and you literally start believing, I must never, ever disappoint anyone. Your entire sense of self-worth becomes entirely tied to your constant availability. When reliability makes that dangerous shift into becoming your identity, suddenly every normal, everyday workplace interaction turns into a total emotional minefield. Think about it. Once your worth is tied to helping, just saying no starts to feel incredibly uncomfortable. Delegating a task? Well, that just feels like losing control of the whole outcome. Asking your own team for help? That feels like you're admitting weakness. And allowing a project to fail, even when it genuinely had nothing to do with you, creates this intense internal anxiety. So what do? You step in, again, and again, and again. And each harmless little choice to just help out eventually balloons your unofficial responsibilities completely out of proportion. That brings us to Section 2, the invisible workload. This is about carrying more than just tasks. You know, a really busy workday rarely actually makes it onto a shared calendar. The invisible workload is all that cognitive and emotional heavy lifting you do totally behind the scenes. It's remembering the stuff your colleagues forgot. It's double-checking if someone actually finished their part of the project. It's building out backup plans because, frankly, you don't fully trust the system. It's stressing about tomorrow's big meeting while you're literally just trying to eat dinner with your family. It's managing the underlying tension between coworkers. Or, hey, maybe it's just quietly rewriting someone else's sloppy work because, let's be real, doing it yourself feels way easier than having a difficult confrontation. None of this is officially your job, but your brain is still forced to process every single bit of it. And this sets up a really dangerous irony: visible results versus invisible costs. This hits the nail on the head as to why two people can work the exact same hours, yet log off feeling vastly different levels of exhaustion. One person is just carrying their assigned tasks, but you're carrying tasks plus uncertainty, emotional labor, and constant anticipation. And the crazy part? The better you get at managing this invisible load, the less people actually see your struggle. They only see the polished, perfect result. They're completely blind to the massive, invisible toll it takes on you. Moving on to Section 3, the reliability trap, or how competence inevitably leads to exhaustion. Let's walk through this trap step by step because it's so common, it's almost predictable. Stage 1 is competence. You consistently deliver, you solve problems, you build trust. Naturally, Stage 2 kicks in, responsibility flows straight to you. I mean, people bring important tasks to the person who actually gets things done, right? But then, Stage 3 hits. You stop evaluating your actual capacity. Instead of pausing to ask if you even have room for a new task, your brain just goes on autopilot with, I'll figure it out, which triggers Stage 4, others adapt. Because you are constantly filling the gaps, the entire system just starts relying on your overextension to function. And finally, boom, Stage 5, exhaustion. Your competence created responsibility, which created expectations, which completely overextended you. Now, this brings us to a piece of corporate advice you've probably heard a million times. Sometimes, resilience is exactly what allowed the unhealthy system to continue. Really think about that for a second. We are constantly told by leadership to be more resilient or just push through it. But within this reliability trap, your resilience is literally what's threatening the very competence that started this whole cycle. By being so relentlessly resilient, you are quietly hiding the fact that the system itself is broken. Which leads perfectly into Section 4, the boundary problem. Let's look at the psychology of saying no. The key takeaway here is that setting boundaries isn't just some simple scheduling trick. For reliable high achievers, it is psychologically agonizing. Imagine you've spent years getting praised for being endlessly available. The very second you finally say, hey, I can't take this on right now, you get slammed by a tidal wave of guilt. All these questions flood in. Are they going to think I'm difficult? Is someone else actually going to do this properly if I don't? Am I letting my team down? It's this intense internal discomfort that sends reliable folks running straight back to overcommitting, just to make the guilt stop. Guilt does not automatically mean you are doing something wrong. I want you to just let that sink in for a moment. Discomfort often just means you're changing a deeply familiar pattern. Setting a healthy boundary absolutely does not mean you don't care about your team. Actually, it means you care about the quality of your work enough to be brutally honest about your real capacity. So how do we fix this? Let's dive into Section 5, 5 practical shifts for making reliability sustainable. Listen, if we don't change anything, this unchecked over-responsibility is just going to lead straight to detachment, zero patience, and that horrible Sunday evening dread. We have to make your reliability sustainable. So shift number 1 is super practical, the pause. This simply means taking a beat to check your priorities instead of just blurting out an automatic sure purely out of habit. The next time someone asks you for something, swap out that instant yes with, let me check my priorities and get back to you. That tiny, simple pause, it gives your brain the breathing room it needs to actually evaluate your workload before your people-pleasing instincts hijack the conversation. Okay, shift 2 is all about separating ownership from helpfulness, taking it on completely versus assisting without absorbing. Right before you swoop in to save the day, ask yourself, is this actually my responsibility? Or am I just stepping in because watching my coworker struggle is making me uncomfortable? Remember, you can totally be a helpful, supportive teammate without absorbing absolute ownership of their problem. Shift 3, make the invisible work visible. You've got to start tracking your mentoring, your emotional labor, the troubleshooting, and all that behind-the-scenes coordinating we touched on earlier. Look at it this way. If your organization is going to constantly reap the benefits of your hidden extra labor, then that work absolutely must be tracked, documented, and made visible to management. Period. Shift 4 is communicating trade-offs. Instead of just giving a flat no to a new request, ask which existing project needs to be delayed so you can take this new one on. Try phrasing it like, I can absolutely take this on, but it means pushing project A to next week. Which one is the priority? See what that does? It's a real game changer. It shifts your limited capacity from being a private, stressful burden into a shared organizational decision. And that brings us to Shift 5, which honestly might be the hardest one, but it is incredibly crucial. Appropriate consequences. This means allowing a non-critical problem to actually become visible instead of just quietly absorbing the impact forever. If you're constantly playing superhero, rescuing broken systems, and sweeping organizational flaws under the rug with your own sweat and tears, well, those systems have zero reason to ever improve. Sometimes deliberately letting a non-critical ball drop is literally the healthiest thing you can do for the entire organization. To wrap up the core message of this explainer, what we are aiming for is reliability as a strength, not reliability as an identity that completely controls you. The goal here isn't to suddenly become a slacker that nobody can count on. No, the goal is precise responsibility. It's about being a true professional who people can trust and depend on, but doing it without sacrificing your own well-being and sanity in the process. I want to leave you with a really provocative question to chew on today. What are you currently carrying at work simply because everyone knows you'll carry it? Take a hard look at your day-to-day routine right now. I guarantee you, your answer to that question is going to reveal way more about your actual workload than your official job description ever will. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Go take back your capacity, and I'll see you next time.